This week's question is, what is the difference between an any data type and a variant data type? So here I have two function blocks. One is our any example, and if I come in and have a look, we have an any data type here, which accepts technically anything. And then in our variant example, we have a variant data type, which again accepts anything. And the question is, what is the difference? Why use one over the other? So let's have a quick look at the instance data, because this shows us what's actually happening. We can see that on the any data type, it's stored as a pointer. And effectively, that is all it is. It's just a pointer. In our variant example, if we go online and have a look at what's going on, we don't get anything for the monitor value because it's a complex data type. And effectively what that means is it contains a pointer, but also some additional data that explains what this data type is. This can be demonstrated by adding this section of code here. So we are in our variant example. Our variant is being passed to our buffer data, but down here we're using the variant directly to check its data type. So this is the variant being passed into this function block equal to the same structure type as data block, which should be true because if we look at main, we're passing the entire data block in. So it is true. However, if I change this to something like the structure from within the data block, that's something valid because we're allowed to pass anything in. If I download this, we should end up with a false output because it doesn't match what the function block is expecting. So false. And if we go and have a look inside, we can see that variant no longer matches data block. And that sort of shows us that the variant does carry the structured signature of the data block, telling this function block how the data is set up. And then we can check whether or not it matches and it's coming out as false. But we can't do that with the any data type. If I try to use the EQ type and assign it to data block, and then try to assign any, you can see that any is not a valid option. And that's because it's just a pointer. It only carries enough information to say, this is where you're looking. So this is where you're looking in DB3. You're starting at dbx.x0.0, which is this here, 0.0, and you're going to grab 66 bytes worth of data, which is the entire length of the block. But it doesn't carry anything else to say the data's set up this way, it's structured in this format, it's just a pointer. So that's the big fundamental difference. How that actually translates into which one you should use really depends on what you're doing. But personally, I would always use variants. And I like using variants because I can do this check. Because there are times where I might want to pass information and do something different depending on if I recognize a structure that's being passed. The other thing to realize with this is it only works if you're using unoptimized data. So that is coming into properties and optimized block access is turned off. And also the data that you're reading needs to be unoptimized as well. If you have any other questions about this, because it is a little bit complicated, don't hesitate to drop a comment or ask me on LinkedIn.